Tribute high above New York City last night for those infected with COVID-19. The Empire State Building illuminated with a red light symbolizing a heartbeat. Now, earlier in the week, some residents expressed concern over a different and more dramatic, that red and white siren that lit up the spire. Chris, you know that display was intended to honor first responders, but people saying maybe that was a little too dramatic.
I like the heartbeat change.
Lights out on the hour. It is the hour of the time. Lights out for the curfew of your body, soul, and
Another individual who wrote about the future was Dr. Jose Arguelles of an organization known as the Planet Art Network. Dr. Arguelles wrote, quote, "Also implicit in all these events is a call for another way of life, another way of doing things, a redistribution of global wealth. In short, a new world order," unquote. Now, just what the future society was that these people are talking about was described in a brief manner by Marilyn Ferguson in her book entitled The Aquarian Conspiracy, and she wrote this, quote, "The new world is the old, transformed," unquote. Another clue about what is in store for the future world was offered by Dr. James H. Billington, who received his doctorate as a Rhodes Scholar. Where have you heard that before? You have a Rhodes Scholar sitting in the Oval Office right now. Received his doctorate as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University and has taught at Harvard and Princeton universities. He wrote this in his book entitled Fire in the Minds of Men. Quote, "This book seeks to trace the origins of a faith, perhaps the faith of our time. What is new is the belief that a perfect secular order will emerge from the forcible overthrow of traditional authority," unquote. You hear that? They believe a perfect secular order will emerge. Nothing perfect will ever emerge from the minds of imperfect men, and no men will ever be ruled by other imperfect men in any kind of a perfect utopian order, secular or otherwise. That is why we must be eternally vigilant. Eternally vigilant. That these future changes would involve force and slavery was confirmed by B.F. Skinner, chairman of the psychology department at Harvard University. In his book entitled Beyond Freedom and Dignity, Dr. Skinner has been called the most influential of living American psychologists by Time magazine. So the world should listen to the professor when he speaks. The magazine told the reader what the message of Professor Skinner's book was. Quote, "We can no longer afford freedom, and so it must be replaced with control over man, his conduct, and his culture," unquote. Not long ago in the Los Angeles Times, there was an article called 10 Forecasts for the Coming Decade. One of these was chemical or electronic implants to control individual behavior on a 24-hour basis. Another student of these changes is Alvin Toffler, who wrote this in his book entitled The Third Wave. And you should read everything that he's written, by the way, because what he's writing is what is coming. Quote, "A new civilization is emerging in our lives. This new civilization brings with it new family styles, changed ways of working, loving, and living, a new economy, new political conflicts, and beyond all this, an altered consciousness as well. The dawn of this new civilization is the single most explosive fact of our lifetimes," unquote. Another scientist involved in commenting upon the future changes was Dr. Carl Sagan, and he's observed this, quote, "It's clear that sometime, relatively soon in terms of the lifetime of the human species, people will identify with the entire planet and the species," unquote. Now the reason, folks, why these changes are necessary was explained by Manly P. Hall, perhaps the world's leading authority on esoteric words and language. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. He wrote in his book entitled Lectures on Ancient Philosophy, quote, "The time has not yet arrived when the average man is strong enough or wise enough to rule himself," unquote. And he explained who he considered worthy enough to rule those on the world considered by the experts to be incapable of governing themselves. He wrote this, quote, "Never will peace reign upon the earth until we are ruled by the fit." And who is the fit? Why, them, of course. The illumined, the priest of the mystery religion of Babylon. Mr. Hall even indicated that these changes would occur soon. He wrote this comment in his book previously cited, quote, 100 years ago, meaning in 1884, folks, it was predicted that within a few centuries men would revert to the gods of Plato and Aristotle. We may all look forward with eager anticipation to that nobler day when the gods of philosophy once more shall rule the world, unquote. Aldous Huxley, in his book called Brave New World Revisited, quotes a character called the Grand Inquisitor in one of Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky's parables as saying this, quote, "In the end they, the people, will lay their freedom at our, the controller's feet, and say to us, 'Make us your slaves, but feed us,'" unquote. The Tucson Citizen newspaper of November the 3rd, 1988, printed a photograph of a group of people involved in a march for literacy, and it clearly demonstrated that at least some people in America are now asking their government to make them their slaves. The picture showed a demonstrator carrying a picket sign that read, quote, "Uncle Sam, we want you to support us," unquote. Mr. Huxley gave us a date when we could expect these changes to occur. He wrote the following in his book written in 1958, quote, "The 21st century will be the era of world controllers," unquote. And then he told us why these controllers would not fail. Quote, "The older dictators fell because they could never supply their subjects with enough bread, enough circuses, enough miracles and mysteries. Under a scientific dictatorship, education will really work, with the result that most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. There seems to be no good reason why a thoroughly scientific dictatorship should ever be overthrown," unquote. Someone who might have given the world the date for the commencement of these predicted changes was Zbigniew Brzezinski, a Marxist, President Jimmy Carter's national security advisor during his 4-year administration. And he wrote the following in his book entitled Between Two Ages, by the way. You should read every book that he's ever written. You will be angered. Quote, "Either 1976 or 1989, the 200th anniversary of the Constitution, could serve as a suitable target date for culminating a national dialogue on the relevance of existing arrangements, the workings of the representative process, and the desirability of imitating the various European regionalization reforms and of streamlining the administrative structure," unquote. And it did begin exactly when he said it would. So the people of the world can now determine what those changes are that those in the positions of implementing changes have in store for them. In summary, folks, these changes are: the old world is coming to an end. It will be replaced with a new way of doing things. The new world will be called the New World Order. This new structuring will redistribute property from the have nations and will give it to the have-not nations. The New World Order will include changes in the family, the workplace, religion. The United States will play a major role in bringing it to the world. World wars have been fought to further its aims. Adolf Hitler, the Nazi socialist, supported the goal of the planners. The majority of the people will not readily accept the New World Order, but will be deceived into accepting it by two strategies. One, those in favor of the changes will have become seated in the very thrones of power, generally without the public realizing that fact, and this has already occurred. Two, the old world order will be destroyed piece by a series of planned nibbles at the established format. The Communist Party is actively supporting the changes to the New World Order. The basic tenets of Christianity, which were the base for the Old World Order, will have to be eliminated. If the slower methodical techniques of change do not function, violence will be introduced and controlled by the planners, including possibly a World War III using atomic weapons. The people of the world will give up their freedom to the controllers because there will be a planned famine or some other serious occurrence, such as a depression or war. The change to the New World Order is coming shortly, folks, and it has already begun.
And by the way, if you want confirmation of what I said about the Founding Fathers, if you really believe that they were Christian, go look at the city that they laid out from the air. Look at the symbolism that they built into it. All deist, all Masonic, all Jacobin. It's another word for Jacobin, Illuminist, Illuminati. Go into the Capitol building, stand right in the center of the rotunda and look straight up at the dome where nobody ever looks. And what do you see? You see the apotheosis of George Washington, riding across the heavens in the chariot of Apollo. Who is Apollo? George Washington. He's become God now. And around the perimeter of the Capitol dome, you see all the old gods of the Roman pantheon. They're all there. Zeus, Mercury, Prometheus, all of them. What's that doing on the inside of our Capitol dome if this country is a Christian nation? Can you tell me that? No. And you never will be able to in a million years unless you turn around and admit the truth. The truth is it never was intended to be. The people in government for many years have been Christian. Are they now? Most of the people in our government now are not Christian, and that's part of the problem today. They have no morals, no ethical standards of behavior, and therefore anything goes. They're a pack of pathetic, chronic liars, which is the sign of a socialist every single time. Socialism believes in what? The supremacy of the mind of man, not in God. Anytime man has supremacy over everything, everything becomes what? Subjective. If you're God, how can you do something wrong? And that's the whole problem with this crowd now. They don't have anybody to answer to. You see, whether you believe in God or not, the human race must have God. They must have a superior power to which they must answer. If they do not, then everything becomes subjective. And if I want to slice your head in half, by God, there's nothing wrong with me doing it because I'm God. You understand that? That's really what's wrong. When man has nothing or no one to answer to, man can do no wrong, can he?